The first duty of government is to protect our rights.
It's our job to maintain the proper role of government and what we were tasked to do.
Obviously, we over budgeted last year. I hate to say that I was right, but I was right. So.
And I think that that's what we need to look at more, is trying to get back to what we used to be, where our churches and our families took care of each other instead of relying on the state.
And we have no way to maintain control over the spending of this program, and it will be a disaster for this state long term.
But we have a whole gamut of kids whose parents would like to do something for them and they cannot.
I take our constitutional rights, the constitutional rights of my constituents, very seriously.
This is simply about putting it out of reach of young, innocent, vulnerable children and making our libraries and schools a safe place for them to go.
And I am increasingly frustrated that we cannot stop ourselves from drinking at the public trough.
He's sounding the alarm. He's saying if we don't address these issues, we potentially might have greater problems moving forward.
Mr. Speaker, no matter how you look at it, no matter how you boil this down, there is never any time that a parent's right to govern what their children see and what they're exposed to should ever be bypassed.
If I was looking at a business and I was looking at these figures, there would be heads rolling because this is unsustainable.
We're supposed to be bottom-up government. We're supposed to be representing my citizens' ideas and your citizens' ideas, and we're supposed to be discussing them and debating them to come to a conclusion.
We need to start making Idaho first. We need to start making America first.
We need to be protecting our First Amendment rights, not inventing ways to slowly chip away at them.
The First Amendment and our freedom of religion, freedom of speech are our first liberties. They are so important. We don't have the rest without them.
Clarify the definition, define the intent and meaning of Senate Bill 1023. Mr. Chairman, debate is open.
Debate being open, is there debate in opposition? Hearing none, Senator Foreman, you're recognized to close debate.
Mr. Chairman, debate is closed.
Debate being closed. The question is, shall amendment to Section 3 be adopted? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The amendment to Section 3 will be adopted. Being no objection, the amendment to Section 4 will be considered.
All right, welcome everybody. You are currently watching the Senate floor. Senator Mark Harris is presiding over the 14th order. And the 14th order in the Senate is where they do amendments to the bills that have been sent there. So you've seen us sometimes watch a committee and someone will recommend that a change happen to a piece of legislation. Well, that can only happen when in the Senate when it gets sent to the 14th order, where the entire body of the Senate basically turns into a committee where they can debate amendments to specific bills. So that is what's happening now. Let's bring in, I believe Brian Allman is with us as well. Good morning, Brian, if he's available. Not yet, maybe not. There he is, yeah. Good morning, Brian. So this is the first time the Senate, I believe, has dissolved into a committee of the whole, as they say. What's your analysis so far when this sort of thing happens?
Well, it's can be unpredictable because once a bill is in the 14th order, anybody can make amendments. And so they can, people have tried to change bills or do hostile amendments that change the purpose of the bill, or they even do things that are called radiator caps where they completely gut the bill and put in something else in its place. But typically I think they try to be nice to each other because, otherwise it becomes tit for tat. So oftentimes the bill sponsors will agree to send a bill to the amending order so that they can make a change that the committee it was presented in wants to see. And it looks like that's what's happening here. Senator Foreman is presenting amendments to his own bill, and they're just accepting them without debate so far.
Correct. So far, yeah. Senator Foreman was in there with Senate Bill 1023, the medical freedom This would establish or amend existing law to prohibit medical mandates under certain conditions, and so we watched some of that in committee. I think the bill right before it had to deal with the debanking, issue. Senate Bill 1027.
It's on the list before it. I'm not sure it came up.
Yeah, they might have went by it, but I thought I heard a little bit of debate on that.
If they did, it was quick.
Yeah. So, yeah, and that's the good news. If this thing goes by quick, then everybody's kind of keeping to their word that they're not going to mess with everybody else's bills. So
it's interesting the way Idaho does it. I've heard about other states where you can amend bills anywhere. You can amend it in the print hearing. You can amend it in the full hearing. You can amend it on the floor, which Idaho doesn't do that. We have kind of stricter rules regarding that. You can amend it in the print hearing, but once it's done there, once it's printed, it's basically set. And if you want to amend it, you have to send it to the amending order. It's 14th order in the Senate or general orders in the House. Can't just throw up amendments on the floor.
Yes, exactly. So we'll keep an eye on this. If anything seems to get heated or exciting or controversial, we'll cover it. As long as it's not noise, it needs to be real work, you know. Over in the House, they were saying goodbye to the pages. I guess it's every 6 weeks or so they go through the pages. The volunteers, usually from high school and such. That
can't believe it's been 6 weeks already.
I know, we're already like a third of the way through here. And so they were doing that business today in the House, and it looks like they're going to try and get some other business back in order. But that's what's happening over there. Brian, we wanted to get into what happened this morning, though. Speaking of amending and amendments and so forth, in the House State Affairs Committee, Representative Dale Hawkins formally presented House Joint Resolution number 1, which would change the language in our Constitution when it comes to education. So let's listen a little bit to Representative Hawkins' presentation.
What we are doing is we are catching up with our statute. We are catching up with what the Supreme Court has already done. I think all of you have some literature that's been passed out to you. I mean, and I think you even have this, which I'll read from. HJR 1 strikes concurrent language from Article 9, Section 9, that the legislature may require that every child shall attend the public school of the state, and replaces it with the principle that parents have the fundamental right to direct the education of their children outside of public education. We get that from this language that we're inserting here, the right of the people to educate their children without government regulation outside of the public school of the state shall not be infringed. We are just recognizing the natural right. We're not granting anything to parents they don't already have. We're not granting anything to parents that we haven't put in code. In Chapter 10, or Title 32, Chapter 10, Chapter 1011, Chapter 1013. I don't think we got these passed out to you. I could read through these. We already do this. In 1014, too, it says, the interest and role of parents in the care, custody, control of their children are both implicit in the concept of ordered liberty and deeply rooted in our nation's history and tradition. They are also among the inalienable rights retained by the people under the 9th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. You have 2 cases in front of you right now that show that our Supreme Court has already ruled for a state to compel attendance has been ruled unconstitutional. It violates religious liberty. We are not dealing with children who are already enrolled in public education. This does not affect them. It doesn't even say that you have a right not to educate your children. That's not assumed here either. This is that you cannot compel somebody who is doing otherwise educating to come to the public school system.
All right, Alman. So that's what's going on here. We've kind of shared some of this language before, the before and after of what it looks like. But when it comes to, and we'll go through some other clips here to challenge, so we don't have to like fully give away the spoilers or whatever. But I guess at a high level here, let's just talk about the fact that we're changing the Constitution, and what that means, how we go about doing it, and then we'll get into the specifics on this particular resolution.
Go ahead. Yeah, Idaho Constitution is the supreme law of the land. I mean, obviously, as states, we are superseded by the federal government in some areas. But the Idaho Constitution is superior to all statutes and rules and everything else that's passed in the state, even at the local level. Nothing can violate the Constitution. So changing it is difficult, but not impossible. Just like the founders of our country, the founders of our state saw that it might be necessary to amend the Constitution. And our state Constitution has actually been amended a lot more than the federal Constitution. Every couple of years, you'll see something on the ballot, because to amend it, you have to get it through both chambers of the legislature, House and Senate, with a 2/3 majority. So it's a much higher threshold than the usual just regular majority, 50% plus one, that you need for laws. And then it goes on the ballot, and the people of Idaho have to approve it. Just last year, 2024, there was a constitutional question. It clarified the language around voting, saying that non-citizens can never vote in Idaho, not at any level, not city elections, state elections, whatever. So that was on the ballot. We voted. We approved it by something like 65 or 70%. So that's now part of the Constitution. So this, if Joint Resolution 1 were to pass, it would it first has to pass the House with a 2/3 majority. Then it has to pass the Senate with a 2/3 majority. Then it goes on our ballot, and it's a question that we, the people, then get to approve. And that's just a simple majority.
Yeah, right. Well done. Well done laying it out there. And just to reiterate, like you just said, we just did this in November, in the November election. So this is not an uncommon thing for us to do with our Constitution. Our Constitution is much larger than the federal Constitution, as it should be, because the federal Constitution wants to leave the outside of the Constitution regulating how the federal government operates and what it looks like, and the Bill of Rights and the rest of the amendments that came out under that. Everything else should be left up to the states to decide. And so this is where we get to do this sort of thing. Okay, well, let's get into the meat of this, because once again, this was all about enshrining in the Constitution, basically in layman's terms. They're not going to argue it this way, but it's basically going to enshrine in the Constitution that parents have the ultimate authority on how they educate their children. And so we're specifically looking at the homeschooling community, because right now the homeschooling community has the rules are such that everything is hunky dory right now for the homeschoolers. But there's nothing in our statute that says, or in our Constitution that says the legislature can come in and just like pass wide sweeping regulations on homeschooling.
Right. And that's been a battle that the homeschoolers have been fighting for a long time to get to that point. You go back to when our Constitution was originally written, 1889, 1890, the time of statehood. That's right at the start of the progressive era, this idea that we can use government to, create a better life for everybody. And you can kind of see where they were coming from at the time, because education was something that not everybody got. Most people would just learn from their parents and learn whatever they knew. And if their parents weren't very literate, then the children wouldn't be literate either. They'd learn their specific trade, and that would be it. And so these progressives had this idea of a uniform public education system. We bring all the children of the state into these public schools where we teach them reading and writing and history and civics and everything else they need to be good citizens of a republic, to maintain this Republican system of government that we were given, that we've inherited. And so you see, it has good intentions, but things have changed and things have developed.
The road to hell is paved with good intentions, Alman.
And so originally they had compulsory education laws saying you have to go to school.
Right.
And they started carving out little things. Well, okay, you can go to private schools if you really want to. Oh, but they still didn't trust parents to educate children. Imagine that. By the 1960s, they put in a law that said, okay, parents can educate children, but it has to be under the purview of the school board that you live in, the district you live in, because we got to make sure they're actually learning proper things. And that's why, that's where the Shippey family, three brothers in the Shippey family, went to jail in 1982 because they refused to allow the local school district to decide what they were going to teach their children. 10 years later, Idaho passed a law saying, okay, we're going to be hands off now. And that's been the case ever since. The code does not define homeschooling. It just assumes that if parents don't want to enroll their children in public schools, then they're responsible for their education.
Right.
And that's great. But this HJR 1 would obviously take it to a new level by enshrining that higher philosophical concept that parents are ultimately responsible for their children into the Constitution, so that we can't have a law later that goes and tries to alter that.
Yeah. And like so many busybodies out there, their immediate reaction to something like this is to err on the side of the bad and the negative. So rather than give everybody the benefit of the doubt and look optimistically at the opportunities available, certain folks like Representative Todd Achilles, Democrat out of Boise, says, well, this just means that all parents are just going to neglect their children and not school them. And what good is that? I mean, this where they always err on the side of good God-fearing people of Idaho being degenerates and wasting their kids' lives. Is I don't know why that always comes to the first, comes to their mind first. But that was the question that was asked by Todd Achilles today and to Representative Hawkins. So let's watch a little bit of that.
Why are we opening the door for parents to not educate their kids, which is how I interpret the downside of this bill?
Representative Hawkins. Mr. Chairman, Representative Achilles, again, I'll just refer to the old language. The legislature may require by law that every child shall attend. That's what we're dealing with here, is attend. We are not giving parents the right to not educate. If you don't educate your children, I guess that would be form of child abuse. We have plenty of other stuff in our code that recognizes that. We are dealing with the issue of the state being able to put a child in the state-run school. That is all this is doing.
Yeah, I mean, there it is. I mean, this doesn't give you a parent's carte blanche to just like neglect their child, so forth, right?
Yeah, no, and it's at a very deeper level. You have people like Representative Hawkins and former Senator Scott Herndon, who testified on this bill, who are pointing out that it's ultimately parents' responsibility. And the parents may delegate that responsibility to the state and send their children to public schools, but ultimately the responsibility is theirs. It's the same perspective that's taken in our Constitution when it says that all sovereignty in our state is inherent in the people, and that we then delegate that responsibility to House of Representatives, Senate, and so forth. Whereas Representative Achilles, he's coming at it from the other direction. He's saying, well, it's the state's responsibility to educate children, and so we've got to make sure that bad parents don't neglect their children. That's our responsibility.
Well, that's and maybe there's something to be said there when you compare it to us electing our own leaders. I mean, are we bad voters when we're electing? Sleepy voters elect bad representatives, right? That's why we have this show, folks. That's why Allman does what he does. We got to wake everybody up. We got to keep you engaged, keep you involved. So that's really good. A good point you make out there. Okay, the chairman of the committee, everyone's favorite committee here, Representative Brent Crane, had a question as well for Representative Hawkins.
I've got a question for you. We've had some issues, one being school choice this year, and the homeschool community, there's discussion in there whether they're split on that issue or supported. Have you met with the homeschool community to find out if they're in support of this joint resolution?
I have had a brief conversation on Pi Day, which was yesterday afternoon, and I think the assurance I walked away with was they are not against this, to change the Constitution. They've been working so hard to fight our school choice bill and arrange for Pi Day. They didn't have enough time to look at it. I believe that this movement, and remember, good body, if we get this all the way across the rotunda, it's still the people of Idaho who make the decision. This constitutional amendment isn't decided here among 16 or 15 individuals or myself or even the 70 or the 35 in the Senate. If we go all the way here, the people of Idaho will decide. But I do think that a lot of the fears that engage the homeschool population is rooted in what we're dealing with right here. It's a looming fear that they may make you go to their, that we may make them go to the school that the state runs.
Okay. Yeah, well put there. We sent in, our organization sent in written testimony in favor of this bill this morning, And we really wanted to highlight how Idaho has made has made national headlines when it comes to homeschooling over the years, as you alluded to earlier, with putting members of the Shippey family in jail in the 80s for homeschooling their kids. And now, before this resolution, still having one of the more freest places in the country to do homeschooling, where the state doesn't even have an accurate count of how many families are homeschooling, because there's absolutely no record. You don't need to register. You don't need to do anything to just homeschool. So we're at a point now where we want to enshrine this in the Constitution. And make sure that we never go down those roads again. Representative Alfieri had a great question for, as you mentioned, former Senator Scott Herndon was there to testify on behalf of this bill. He had Alfieri had a great question as to what are we trying to fix with this particular legislation. So let's watch this.
Representative Alfieri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Herndon, is there one particular problem that you can point to that we're seeking to solve in this?
I would say, Mr. Chairman and Representative Alfieri, we want to take the strength that we have now, and we have excellent statutes on this subject. 10 years ago, the legislature passed overwhelmingly House Bill 113 as amended here in the House. And House Bill 113 put some very strong provisions about the right of parents to choose education for their children. We've gained that over a long fight that many of the representatives in this room have been part of, to put very solid homeschool laws and private school laws and protections into the Constitution. And we want to preserve that for future generations of Idahoans. So what we're protecting against, the problem we would be solving is, what if one day this Idaho legislature was slightly different? Do we want a future legislature to be able to just by statute easily encroach upon those protections, or do we want to take what we've won over decades of effort and have it be as easy as a statutory change? And I know statutory changes aren't easy, but that'll give you the idea. But I'll give you one more. The concept that the government, as the dispenser of education in Article 9, will create intelligent people through the public schools of the state. All throughout Idaho's history, we've also seen that private school, homeschool, and other options create intelligent people. And this levels the playing field between that fact that private schools do produce intelligent people as well as the public schools. And it basically creates a level exaltation in the Idaho Constitution for both.
Follow up? Any further questions for Mr. Herndon?
Very good. Okay, let's dip out of that. Alman, I think, such great arguments made for this resolution. And I think once it gets to the people and gets on the ballot, I think that's when you're going to start to see maybe some of the rhetoric get heightened. But folks, let me just let you know, let's throw up the graphic here. We are fully behind this. We are fully behind HJR1. We think this is homeschool freedom for all. We believe that HJR1 will permanently enshrine homeschool freedom, in our Constitution, and that is exactly why we should support this, and we expect to see many of our great homeschoolers get behind this resolution. Excellent. Very good. All right, Alman, let's take a quick break. We'll update people on what's happening in the Senate and the floor, and we'll be right back.
And that's exactly what happened. You want to pull the tape? You can pull the tape, because we now got video.
Idaho is the dirt under your fingernails after an honest day's work. Idaho is the hug around your neck when your daughter spells her first word. Idaho is the written word of the law, steadfast and impartial, guarding liberty for all. Idaho is the family rifle passed down, a legacy of protection and the right to stand firm. Idaho is the echo of your own voice, unshaken and free, standing tall among the world's silenced. Idaho is the home that's built to weather storms, not empty wallets. Idaho is the quiet trust between a patient and healer, unbroken and sacred. Idaho is the hymn carried by the Spirit, gathering neighbors together in faith and purpose. Idaho is the laughter around a campfire, a family's bond growing stronger with every word. Idaho is the pioneer's will, firm and clear. We govern ourselves, free and unbound. Idaho is what America was. Let's keep it that way. Ask your legislator to sign the Citizens Alliance of Idaho pledge to preserve our shared values. We ride together.
All right, we are back. Almond is with me today. We just saw on the House floor H-172 pass, I'd say unanimously, 67-0. We got 3 absent, so that just passed the House. That's the consent agenda calendar thing that for cities and stuff. So overwhelming support there, as much support as you can get without 3 people not being there. So very good.
An interesting little bill, but it seems common sense to me. So it seems like the House, even the Democrats agreed on this one.
Yeah, everybody agrees on this one. It's a nice change. Okay, very good. Let's move on here. This morning, Representative Monks was in the House Rev and Tax Committee, and he did a little 1-2 swap here, a very minor detail with the food tax credit bill. Oh man, I mean, talk about a contentious issue here. This whole grocery tax thing. I mean, if it were up to me, you get rid of the whole thing and just be done with it. But people love to argue over this. I think that's what it is. It's like when you're in a marriage and your wife walks in or your husband walks in and you look at them and they're just like they're ready to fight. They want to argue because you haven't argued in like 3 days, and so you walk in and you go, grocery tax. and then the whole place erupts. I mean, that's what goes on. That's what I feel is going on in the State House right now. That aside, we've got this food tax credit. What did you witness today, Alman?
So yeah, I watched this committee. It was an interesting discussion. Obviously with the food tax, Idaho created a sales tax starting at 3% way back in 1965. It was supposed to fund education. It was eventually raised to 6%. And unlike a lot of other states, Idaho taxes food as well. It's just everything you buy is taxed. Other states carve out food and groceries and certain other things. And so since 1965, there have been efforts to exempt food and groceries from that sales tax. And so far they haven't succeeded. The closest they came was 2017. There was a bill to do so, to eliminate the tax and eliminate the associated grocery tax credit. But Governor Butch Otter vetoed it. Now, the credit is something that they came up with at the same time in 1965 to give people back a few bucks to kind of cover some of those sales taxes that you pay. It was officially codified into statute in the 2000s as the food tax credit. Before that, it was just called a tax credit. So, and that's been part of the argument. The 2017 bill got rid of both the tax and the credit, whereas now you've heard some people saying, well, let's just get rid of the tax but keep the credit. So that's where we are. And so there's 2 competing ideas here. Should we eliminate the tax on food, or should we keep raising the credit so that Idahoans and families get more money back for what they actually pay? Families like mine, we get more back on the grocery tax credit than we pay in grocery taxes, whereas others who perhaps have more expensive tastes get less back, and they end up subsidizing families like mine. And that's just the way they've chosen to do it. So there's arguments on both sides, but it seems like most of the members of the legislature are behind raising the credit rather than eliminating the tax, and that's what Representative Monks presented today. Several people, Mark Johnson, a Republican from here in Ada County, testified in favor, saying that he kind of likes both ideas, but this one seems to work out better just with the logistics of it. So.
Yeah, Alman. I mean, I get it, and you say you make good arguments on both sides of this debate, and you'll see Democrats in there too saying they want to raise the credit, and then they'll submit bills to get rid of it. And so I think it's just one of those. It's one of those issues that is being used, for political purposes. A lot of times, and I haven't seen any like truly scientific polling on the matter, but every time I see the question asked in a mass audience, do you want to get rid of income tax, property tax, or grocery tax? The number one thing is get rid of property tax. And I'm not saying you can't do all 3 at once, or deal with all three at once in terms of getting rid of or reducing. But when I look at the flip side of all of this, and we had somebody, I think it was somebody up there that was saying every year that they've been in, I think it was Charlie Shepard saying every year he's been in the legislature, they've had a surplus. They've had a surplus. Mm-hmm. And so, and then you've got bills that want to raise park fees, and you got all these other bills that like, why just think outside the box and like give the money back to people, cut a department over here, and then fund whatever that money was used for over here, over on this side. I mean, there's so many different ways, and we're seeing it now with Elon Musk and Doge. Like let's just think differently, to quote Steve Jobs, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of ways, and I think it was Mark Johnson who actually alluded to that, or it might have been one of the other testifiers that said money's fungible, so you can cut taxes here or cut taxes here, and it really doesn't matter. You can move things around, and I think we do need some of that outside the box thinking in the legislature, definitely. It's interesting. You mentioned what people want to see. If you ask which tax should be removed, property taxes always wins. But if you ask in isolation, should the grocery tax or should groceries be exempted from sales tax, everybody says yes. It's like 80%. A lot of people want that. So people kind of want both. But then there's at a higher level, there's a debate over what's the most fair form of taxes. Nobody likes any taxes, and we heard Representative Monk say that. But there's a conservative argument that consumption taxes, sales taxes, are the most moral or least immoral because they are the most directly controlled by the consumer. You can choose how much you're going to buy. But then the other side says, well, everybody needs food, so putting taxes on that is inherently immoral. So this debate's been going on. It's not going to end because it looks like this is the bill that's probably going to go through. So they'll raise the credit. Right now it's at $120 per person or $140 for senior citizens. This one's going to raise both that to $155. And it'll be equal along the way. Representative Monk says that it, didn't make sense to give senior citizens the higher discount, the higher credit, because, if you've seen how much a teenager eats, you know they eat a lot. But so it seems like this is what the legislature.
Yeah, but this is the problem, Alman. This is the problem when you get into the government handing out money and doing redistribution of wealth. I mean, Charlie Shepard said it in the committee today. We don't have the clip, but he said he's like, I don't like this, and this is the situation we got ourselves in. So again, if you just remove the entire scenario and just say get rid of the grocery tag, then we don't have to deal with all of this stuff. And then the folks that are complaining like, well, but we get so much money from out-of-staters and all that stuff. Well, why should, they're Americans. Do we need to tax everybody else that doesn't come into Idaho? I mean, we raise fees, hunting fees if you're out of state and that sort of thing. Like, I get it. But it's being used as an issue to divide people. And I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. That's why I'm still sitting out here and not in the legislature trying to fight for a reason on this. But I get it. And again, the fungible thing. I mean, there's different ways. There's all sorts of different ways. So we'll see where it goes.
As with everything, it reminds me of Thomas L's quote that there's no solutions, only trade-offs. So whatever we do, it's not going to be perfect, and there's always going to be room for improvement, room to argue, room to complain.
Yeah. Well, if we're going to keep going on this little redistribution of wealth, experiment, at least everybody's getting something out of it. And, I don't know.
I think that's what Representative Shepard said. He said it is redistribution, but of all the possibilities, if you cut taxes one way, it's only going to help the wealthy, or if you cut taxes another way, it's going to be disproportionate that way. But at least just raising the credit gives everybody the same amount of money back.
Right. And then it's up to you to do with it as you wish. So maybe that's the answer. Maybe we just settled it right there. I don't know. But all right, very good. We had another interesting bill that passed yesterday, the teachers union pay bill. Yes. And so, Alman, I want to share this clip with you because we posted it this morning over at Citizens Alliance X feed. Because Representative Lance Cloud, this is a shot across the bow, folks. He's not a pledge signer anymore. He doesn't want to sign the pledge anymore. So and we'll figure out why. That's a story for another day. But he has such bizarre arguments sometimes. He stood up and basically was against the teachers union bill. Can you describe just real briefly? Oh no, we don't have to. We have the document. We've got the document. Let me get my glasses here. They're going to bring up. Here's the bill. This is what passed in the House yesterday. H-98. This is this would say here. I have it underlined in red. It says no public official in a position of authority over professional employees may use or authorize the use of taxpayer funds to promote teachers unions by, and then there's 5 different categories. The first one is by deducting dues, fees, and so forth on behalf of any teachers union. So describe that, Alman. What does that mean when the state, someone in a position of authority deducts dues on behalf of a teachers union? What does that mean?
I'm not 100% clear on that, but it's I believe in some cases when a teachers union negotiates their contract with the school district, part of that is automatic dues deduction, where they'll, just like your taxes are deducted from your paycheck, they will just deduct your union dues directly. So it's not something you write a check for. It just comes out of your paycheck.
Exactly. That's exactly what that is. So what this bill is saying right off the bat is that school districts, the state is no longer going to do that. You want to send your dues in, you got to do it yourself. We're not going to make it easy and do a payroll deduction on behalf of a third-party teachers union, right? Mm-hmm. Not the government, not the IRS and all that stuff, but on behalf of a teachers union that's politically motivated. Right? Let's just make no mistake about it. They're completely open about their political beliefs and who they back and what they use their money for. So that's number one. The state can't do that. The other things you can't do is increase an employee's compensation with the intent of covering, dues. They're not going to provide more personnel or contact information of a professional employee to a teachers union. They're not going to. You can no longer require or coerce a professional employee to meet, communicate, listen to, or otherwise interact with a teachers union. Like none of the things that were brought up when we covered this the other day, right? So here's what happened when Lance Klaus stood. Now that you've seen the bill here, here's what happened when Lance Klaus stood up to argue against this bill.
25.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To debate.
Gentleman has the floor.
Yeah, I want to point out that we are a right-to-work state, and I supported that wholeheartedly. I have some resistance to the idea of public employees being in a union. However, when I looked at this bill, I think it went too far. And I recognize that it went too far on one of the very first sections of the bill when it starts out with the word dues. If it's too costly or is a cost for a school district to deduct the dues from a paycheck and then remit that most likely electronically to a union, then that's pretty petty. That's very, very narrow. And I think but the good lady from 9 pointed out a bunch of egregious things that I think can happen and do happen with state taxpayer funds. And I would support that. But when they start out with one of the very first words is dues paid as a deduction from the payroll voluntarily, and the money is coming from the employee, that I think that just goes too far. And I told the gentleman lobbyist that came to talk to me that why do you have to start with that? You started with the paragraph B, it would have gotten more people's attentions. That's paragraph B is something more egregious that you would be concerned with. But I feel like it just goes downhill because of the way it starts out. And for that reason, I can't support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah. So what do you think? He looks at the bill and he thinks, oh, there's all these egregious things that we want to stop, but this payroll deduction, it just seems so petty. It seems so petty to do that. And I'm thinking to myself, how weak are you? How weak are you That this is the thing that causes you to not. This is the problem with some of these politicians, Almond, is that they look for what they're beholden to something, but they have to step forward and say, oh, I this one little tiny thing I really don't like about this bill. I mean, everything else is great. It's egregious that these things are happening and we should stop it. But a payroll deduction, I don't know. That just seems so petty. It's pure projection, don't you think?
Well, like you said, it makes it sound like he's beholden to someone and is looking for a reason to vote against the bill. Not to impugn any motives, but I'd just like to point out that the Idaho Education Association, the teachers union itself, which, as you said, engages in a lot of political activity and some of it on the taxpayers' dime, endorsed 11 Republicans last year in the general election. They endorsed a lot of Democrats, but they endorsed 11 Republicans as well. And it just so happens that Representative Clow is one of them. Not saying that's why he's voting the way he is, but that's the truth.
But that's the truth. Exactly. So when the union comes out against this, specifically, they're wholeheartedly against this bill. And then those, and I'd like to see all those endorsements. Did they all vote against this bill?
Yes, the 11 Republicans were endorsed by the union, and all 11 voted against the bill.
There you go, folks.
It's what I wrote recently over at my platform is that it really seems like the union thinks that your tax dollars belong to them and your children belong to them.
Oh my God.
The tax dollars, notice anytime there's an expenditure for, say, school choice, it's $50 million, which, as folks in the debate last night pointed out, is less than 0.2% of the total education budget in Idaho. They're debating against it, saying this is taking away money from public schools, because their baseline assumption is that any tax dollars automatically belong to the public schools and cannot go to anything else. They're even arguing that unions deserve tax dollars directly funneled to them, in the form of automatic dues reduction or dues deductions, or extra space at a school for union activities that's provided by the taxpayer, or even paid time off to go do union activities, which includes political activities. And that's what they're arguing for. It's this massive sense of entitlement.
Yeah, it really is. And you become awfully suspicious. And like you said, you don't want to impugn motives, but I mean, it's blatant. You stand up and you call out a bill that you think has egregious activities in it that they want to stop. And then you nitpick on direct deposit from a basic function that you think is like, oh, why did you start with the dues? Like it's pure projection. It's so petty. And I don't know if you noticed this, but during that clip, maybe we can do some throw it up again. We don't have to watch, we don't have to listen to it. But if you as soon as he said the dues aspect of it, you can see sitting behind him is Representative Wendy Horman, who's a huge target of the union lobby, right? Huge target. And as soon as he said that, she looked at him and then turned around and went to go speak to somebody behind her. And I thought, oh man, I'm really fascinated to know what that was, because there she goes. She's like, what did he just say? And then she like wheels herself over there to be like, you got to be kidding me. Like, this guy's a joke. I mean, that's what I would have been doing if I was sitting in that position. So I don't know if you talked to Wendy or not, but it'd be interesting to know what she thought of that. Brian, I'm sick of these folks, and we're getting to the point where we're, 6 weeks in, right? Is that where we're at? We're 6 weeks in, that we start seeing the lay of the land. We start seeing the votes tally out there. And folks, we've been nice on this program, but that's the opening shot. We're going to start calling these people out, because that's what we do. We hold people accountable. And if Representative Clow doesn't want to sign our pledge anymore, we had a wonderful, beautiful update to our pledge to protect the innocence of children. And now Representative Clow, because he's been in questionable standing for a number of years, is like ignoring it. I don't want to have anything to deal with it anymore. I don't want to have anything. Well, you don't want to have anything to deal with it anymore, buddy. And you start voting like this. He also voted against the mask mandate bill, Almond. So I don't mean to bring, you're on screen with me as I'm blasting out Representative Clow. I apologize for that, but we'll do more of that later. All right.
It is what it is. I try not to impugn motives, and I try not to go after people directly, but people should be held accountable for their votes and for what they say. And I think that's perfectly fair game.
Yeah, well, fair enough. Thank you. I appreciate that, Alman. All right. Well, we're going to let you go. We're going to take a quick break. We were hoping to have Representative Dale Hawkins come on. I don't know if I'll be able to catch him in time, but we'll try for that to talk more about HJR1. But Alman, where can people follow you, and what are you working on?
GemStateChronicle.com. I've been really focused on the school choice stuff the last few days, last couple of weeks, actually. I'm going to try and pivot to some other stuff. There's some, there's a lot of bills going on this year that are going under the radar. They're not flashy like school choice or grocery tax or, teachers unions there, but there's a lot of just fixing of the way our state government works that I think is really important to focus on to understand how it's happening. So I'm going to focus on that also at Gemstate Brian on Twitter.
Beautiful. All right, just doing some quick texting over there. I'm not ignoring you, Alman. I'm listening. And your message is for them. Pay attention, folks. Follow Brian, and we'll have our weekly article from Alman coming out tomorrow as well. So we'll look forward to that. All right, thanks, brother. Talk to you then. Okay, folks, we'll take a real short break. We'll see if we can get Representative Hawkins in here. If not, we still got some other things on deck to keep you up to speed. We'll be right back.
It's our job to maintain the proper role of government and what we were tasked to do.
Idaho lawmakers swear an oath to support the Idaho and U.S. constitutions. But how's that working out for you? Because not all Idaho lawmakers share the same values. That's where the Citizens Alliance of Idaho pledge comes in. 10 statements inspired by those two founding documents that are designed to preserve our shared values. Values such as education freedom, safeguarding free speech, defending our protected right to self-defense, and being responsible stewards of taxpayer dollars. When a lawmaker signs the pledge, they are performing an act of political courage, accepting the challenge to be a champion for our values, and serving with political integrity. To find out if your lawmaker signed the pledge, visit idahopledge.com. Paid for by Citizens Alliance of Idaho. We ride together.
Right, folks, welcome back. This is Idaho Signal, and we cut through the noise. We try to hold people accountable, and that oath commercial you just saw is, that's our bread and butter. We have people sign the pledge if they volunteer to sign it. No one's forcing anybody to do anything. But it's a great tool for folks to use, for legislators to use, to let their constituents know, to let their voters know how they're going to vote on a particular set of values. And so Representative Lance Clow, he signed it years ago. He didn't perform very well under it, but the last few sessions he was in questionable standing. And we have 3 tiers. You can be in good standing or bad standing, and if you're somewhere in the middle, you're in questionable standing. And so we encourage you to get back to good standing. And so we've been doing that over the years and trying to encourage folks like him to get back into good standing. And then we did an update to the pledge where we said, we know what we need to, with the way the zeitgeist is, the way what's going on in our world right now, we really want to make sure that the folks that we're helping amplify their voice and their message, that they're also on board with protecting the innocence of children. And so we added that pledge point to our pledge. Great. Yeah, there it is there. I will not vote against any wise and well-directed bills that protect the innocence of the life and the innocence of all children. But Representative Clow has not returned to sign the pledge on that. And that's unfortunate. And then, as you saw a moment ago, I mentioned that he also voted against the prohibition on mask mandates, which means he's all for putting masks back on children again. I don't know what this means. But Representative Clow, if you're watching, give me a call. We can walk through these things. But after this vote on H98 with the teachers unions, where all 11 Republicans who were endorsed by the teachers union, all 11, apparently, according to Allman and according to the vote, they all voted against and voted with the teachers union position. I don't know, man. There's folks in there that don't have your best interest in heart, so we're keeping tabs on them. A couple of folks that still do have your best interest at heart and the best interest of our children and our world, and our fantastic pledge signers in good standing is Representative Heather Scott and Senator Tammy Nichols, and they both have teamed up on a bill it's a fascinating bill, and it's one that I thought I didn't think we actually needed because we all thought it was already happening, but apparently it's not happening the way it should be happening, perhaps. And so Senate Bill 1046 was in committee yesterday, and this is a bill that would make sure that our public schools are teaching students how human beings are created, how they develop in the womb. And there's a big reason behind this is because we've gone probably through a generation or two where the science has really elevated to the point where we can understand the development of a human being in the womb. And so it's not just about how you made the baby, but it's about teaching students the development of the baby. And so, and the reason for this was put so perfectly with an experience that Representative Heather Scott had. So now that I feel like I've caught you up to speed a little bit, let's listen to Representative Scott tell her story of why she was inspired to get behind this bill.
Thank you. I'm Representative Heather Scott, District 2, and I'm the co-sponsor. And I didn't have a lot to add. She shared a lot. But I did want to share a personal story that made me interested in this bill. And my niece was 18. She came out to visit me in Idaho, and we were at the county fair, and we were walking by a pro-life booth, and they had those little babies, like all the different sizes of development. And she looked at me and she said, "Aunt Heather, that's not real." I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "We learned in school it's just a clump of tissue." And she's like, "They just do that to make people come talk to their group." And so I found that really disturbing. So when this bill came to light, and Tammy and Senator Nichols and I had learned of it, I thought this would be a really good bill to co-sponsor. So that's all I wanted to share.
Wonderful story there. I mean, heartbreaking, especially because it's worse than you thought. If you're sitting in school and all your teachers are telling you, it's just a clump of cells until about, an hour before birth, then it becomes a baby, poof, right? But I mean, how many of you out there have heard the same argument for years and years? It's just a clump of tissue. It's just a clump of cells. And over the years, we have seen science really figure out by ultrasound. Before they were sonograms. Now you have ultrasound. Now you have like 3D ultrasound where you can like get a full 3D picture of I have copies of from when my wife was pregnant with our children. You have 3D copies of 3D versions of what the baby looks like inside. And then there is when you can get all of that information, and then you can create a sort of like a computer generated model, to really clean up the image, to really get into there and look at what it looks like from inside the womb. And so Senator Tammy Nichols presented, here it is. Senator Tammy Nichols presented this video. It's called Baby Olivia, and it goes through the journey from from conception, you can see here, and where the egg meets, or the sperm meets the egg, and it gets embedded into the uterus, and so forth. And as this video unfolds, it's basically narrated, and it goes through a sort of the stages, the 2 weeks, the 3 weeks, and so forth throughout the life of the unborn child here. And so at a certain point, she shared this video in the room with the legislators, with the committee. And it was fascinating because there was definitely a lot of pushback from this, because obviously this isn't real footage. This is computer generated, right? But something like this was used as Senator Nichols says she wanted to see something like this, whatever the curriculum would be, to be shown during to students so that they understand, the truth of what really is inside the womb. Now, of course, the Democrats, who are completely bonkers on what goes on inside the womb when it comes to pro-life and pro-choice issues or pro-abortion issues and that sort of thing. Like, this is their bread and butter. They have to defend this with all their might. And so Senator Ward Engelking pushed back on not only this video, but the whole thought of even teaching what goes on inside the womb. The bill here would instruct 5th through 12th graders, 5th grade to 12th grade, would have, if there's ever any discussion on the development of a human fetus, of the baby, that they be taught these types of science. And so we're going to watch the whole exchange here between the senator and Senator Nichols.
In this, it says shall, so it's mandating, and it's 5th through 12 inclusive. In every class that discusses or provides instruction concerning human biology. That's a pretty wide swath of classes. Having taught 6th grade and junior high, this type of video, high definition video ultrasound, in my opinion, would not be appropriate, age appropriate, for 5th, 6th, and probably even most junior high students. Currently, the practice is we bring in nurses or doctors to do any instruction on this. And then finally, I guess I'd say that I see a lot of inaccuracies according to pediatrics and Public Health Association and gynecologists in this video that we just saw. I know that there is no consensus among the scientific or religious communities about when life begins, and yet that's how this video starts. So I'm worried that we would be putting inaccurate information out to our students that is not age appropriate, and that there's a civil action, that the Attorney General could bring a civil action compelling school districts and charter districts to comply with the provisions in this section. So if you'll just talk me through some of those issues I see, maybe I'm missing something.
Senator Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Senator Ward Engelking. I guess I would start with there's only one way a baby develops. And so, and again, we're not specifying what the development video has to be. It can be whatever, but there's one process that babies go through in development. And this is just saying that they're going to show from conception, which there's only one way for that really to be done too. Unless you're using some sort of medical type process, but just the normal development of a baby, this is your foundation, this is your basics. I don't know of any other, we don't grow them out of a garden or anything along those lines. So that's your foundation. There is a section in there that does bring in the Attorney General for making sure that it is being done. We have that with a lot of different things. Again, different individuals, the way that they teach it or instruct it, from the teachers that I talked to, that was the way that they do it there. This wouldn't change necessarily any of that. It's just saying to incorporate this also. And then let me know if I didn't answer any other questions.
God bless you. God bless you, Senator Nichols. That was so great. Sometimes these Democrats, they lob up these basketballs that you just dunk down, Babies aren't grown in a garden. This is how it's done. Unbelievable. And again, the Democrats here, they're so hypocritical. It is too much for a 7th grader or an 8th grader to learn how a baby develops in the womb. But it's completely okay. Is that what Allman's saying? He's about to say what I was going to say. Yeah, but it's completely okay to figure out what kind of gender you are, or whether you like to diddle yourself and that it's okay to do so, or what sexual preferences that you like. That's fine at 5th grade. Shout out, be proud, wear a pride flag in kindergarten, and talk about all sorts of gender bender, stuff or whatever. I don't know, all the garbage that's going on that are sitting on the shelves in the libraries and all this stuff. You've seen it all. It's disgusting. That's okay. That's okay. But understanding what a unborn child looks like at 4 weeks and seeing a heartbeat, that's unacceptable. Unacceptable. Okay, well, the good news is that bill. What happened to that bill? Actually, I think that bill. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it might have gone to the 14th order to get amended. Because of the cause of action. I think I could be wrong. I believe Senator Nichols says she would be willing to have it go to the 14th order in order to tweak some of the cause of action or the punishments for not doing it. I think I could be correct. I apologize for not having that information right now. I just got so caught up in the argument, but that's what happened. So that's Senate Bill 1046. If you want to pay attention to that, please mark that down in your own bill tracker and keep eyes on that one. It was great to see that. Okay, folks, we're bumping up here at the bottom of the show here. We did have one more thing we wanted to show you, but I believe that it's I believe what we're going to do here is just have it be something we'll post on its own. And maybe we'll show it tomorrow for the Friday show. Sorry, that music just like boom came in. But folks, if you want to leave us a message, I want to hear from you. We love hearing from you folks. 208-402-4915. We love the comments that come in on the stream on all the platforms. We're seeing YouTube, we're seeing X, we're seeing Facebook. Fantastic. Make sure you're over on Rumble and you have a backup account on Rumble, as well as over on X. Follow us, Citizens_Idaho is where we are on X. If you're watching the show on my personal account, you want to go over to Citizens Alliance. But that's the phone number there, folks. We want to play your voicemail on the air. It's so great when we can do that. And also, if you're like me and you need coffee in the morning, lifecda.com. Up here in Coeur d'Alene, it's Life Public House, and they roast their own coffee. They source it themselves. Single origin coffee, I believe. I think that's how it goes. Promo code Signal. Get 10% off your online order over at lifecda.com. Okay, well, we'll keep tabs on things. You guys need to do so as well. And I don't know what that meant. I'm going back to work, y'all. All right, we'll see you here tomorrow for the Friday show. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
This bill, I think, puts a stake in the ground that says we have a sovereign right to protect what's ours.